132 turning into 133 here on a Saturday on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, our artist today has been the music from the Never Back Down soundtrack. And speaking of fighting, Rich Quinones does more than host a show here on 97.3 ESPN Monday through Friday from 12 to 2. He also has been covering boxing for a long time. He's got his website, Journeyman Boxing. He calls fights for boxing and MMA. And with Pacquiao versus Hoorn tonight, I didn't think of a better person who come on and talk boxing than Rich. Rich, how you doing?
Josh, how you doing, pal? I appreciate you having me on, and I like the segue music. That was a pretty that's a nice little niche movie. Never Back Down.
It really was. I was kind of explaining it earlier. It's kind of like one of those like action flick, but also like a coming of age for like a kid in his late teens kind of movie. It's one of those movies, if you don't like coming of age movies and you don't like action movies, it's just not for you. That's all.
No, I hear you. You know, it doesn't rival the training sequences in Rocky, but it's right up there.
So here's where I'm coming at from this with Pacquiao, and that is,
yep,
he's going for his 60th win, and in the grand scheme of things, that sounds like a big deal. But, you know, you look at the way boxing has come, you know, how far we've come from, you know, you got guys in the 40s and the 50s, the guys like Joe Louis and Marciano. You know, later you had Ali, and you had Sugar Ray Robinson, and then all over the years how boxing has evolved. And now we're in a world where boxing is it's just a different sport in some ways. And I want to know, does that 60 wins really mean something?
No, it doesn't. I mean, the only thing that really means anything is at the end of the day, Manny Pacquiao is going to be widely considered one of the greatest boxers of all time, certainly this generation, first and only 8-division world champion. I mean, he's won 11 major world titles. He's the first boxer to win lineal title in 5 different weight classes. It's unparalleled, Josh. It's unmatched. So, no, from a record standpoint, a win-loss standpoint, absolutely not. You know, here's the interesting thing, right? He's fighting outside the U.S., and it's not really for a large purse necessarily. It's pretty foreign to him in this regard, taking on Jeff Hoorn. And, you know, Hoorn's 29, Pacquiao's 40. The thing is, Pacquiao still, he's got the skill. He's got that level of speed, that slickness. He's arguably one of the best pound-for-pound top teners that we've seen, like I said, over the last 30-something odd years. And outside that, just bad loss to Floyd Mayweather, where whether he was hurt or not, you can't pull out because too much money on the line back in 2015, the fights against Marquez. He's dominated every opponent he's faced for a decade. So if he goes on and he gets to win tonight, I don't think it really means anything. I mean, at the end of the day, he is basically defending his WBO title in the backyard of his opponent, Jeff Hoorn. So the beauty of this is that it's going to be on ESPN, it's 9 p.m., and it's free, and that's good for the boxing fans.
Before we get to the fight itself, you know, Pacquiao was undefeated from 2005 to 2012, and it seemed like during that stretch, he was just fighting every big name. And I feel like whether someone likes Pacquiao or not, to me, what makes him significant is that he wasn't like Floyd in the fact that Floyd kind of like picked and chose who he would fight. Manny was just like, hey, you want to fight? Let's go. And for me, as a fight fan, I appreciate that.
Yeah, listen, after a while you run out of guys to fight. You know, the argument with Mayweather was a lot of the guys he fought, the timing was a little off. But you're absolutely right. You know, the fact that Manny Pacquiao would take on the Moraleses, the Velasquez, the De La Hoyas, the Diaz, the Cottos, the Hattons, the Claudis, the Margaritos, the Mosleys. I mean, that's Tim Bradley Jr., Chris Algieri, a good fighter. You know, the fight against Floyd Mayweather Jr., he always fights those guys. And you remember, you know, Pacquiao was a small guy. He was a small guy when he started off his career. He was a flyweight. I mean, so think about that for a moment. Then he ballooned up, and then he started to go to bantamweight, and then obviously the featherweight, and then we saw with the welterweight of 144, 147. He's fought everyone, arguably, and their mother. And you're right. You know, the thing with Pacquiao is another belt would be great, but I think it's good for boxing because he's also giving a young fighter in Hoorn who's 16-0-1 an opportunity to put a nice little win on his resume, which would ultimately really be a career-defining fight for Jeff Hoorn if he can find a way to win it tonight.
Who is Jeff Hoorn?
Jeff Hoorn is a tough-minded fighter out of Australia. He's a fighter that if you look at, you can't always go by the box rec. It's not always the most accurate gauge, but he does have some knockout power. In 17 fights, he's got 11 knockouts. He's fought for vacant WBO Intercontinental welterweight championships before. Randall Bally was a veteran that he stopped in a fight. Blanco was another guy that was an up-and-coming prospect that he stopped, unanimous decision. He's just one of those fighters that he wants an opportunity, right? He wants an opportunity to kind of disrupt. You hear me say this all the time, to disrupt the apple cart. And he's never fought outside Australia or New Zealand. And again, people will say he lacks a signature victory. Well, a couple of the guys I gave you, okay, but he's lacked that victory, Josh, that would garner him attention outside the U.S. And if he found a way to win tonight, then that makes a large statement, especially consider how large the viewing audience is going to be. And a lot of people expect Pacquiao to return with a win, and the fact that he's returning to basic cable. So it's kind of a win-win for everyone.
Having a fight like this on free TV, to me, is a big deal because I look at boxing as a sport that, and I know, we can't say, the good old days because it really wasn't, but, when you had fights of the big fighters in the 60s and 70s on TV, on ABC, that was appointment viewing. And I feel like boxing, because it's so many pay-per-views and it's so much on the Showtimes and the HBOs, that it kind of lost a little bit of that, here's a great fight on free TV. And I remember last year when I watched Danny Garcia versus Robert Guerrero, and that was just a war all the way through. I mean, it made me think, wow, I would love to see this more often on free TV. And to have Pacquiao versus Hoorn on free TV and a name like Manny Pacquiao on free TV, I think is a big deal to maybe drag some people who were maybe kind of like on the fence with continuing to follow boxing. I think this can bring some of those people back in.
Yes, and to your point, remember, there was Thurman Garcia as well on CBS. Now, that averaged close to 4 million viewers, and it peaked at 5.1 million. That was the largest audience for a primetime boxing broadcast since 1998, I believe. So you're getting good fights. With Premier Boxing, PBC on FS1 and what Al Heyman's doing, a lot of people don't understand when you buy that airtime, you kind of pick and choose who you're going to put on TV, whether it's on Bounce or Fox, but he kind of controls the fighters in that regard. What Top Rank is doing, just for the listening audience to kind of get an understanding, think about this. Vasily Lomachenko, who's a junior lightweight world title holder, just a wonderful fighter with only a handful of fights under his belt. You got the current unified junior welterweight world champ, Terrence Crawford. They're arguably two of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the world. They're going to also fight on ESPN, in August. And that's because of Top Rank and the network. So you got Top Rank tonight. That's already partnered up with ESPN for Pacquiao and Hoorn, which is ESPN Deportes. You've got undercard as well. You've got some good fighters, but you also got Lomachenko and you also have Crawford, who are, guys that you want to see. Earl Spence, we saw a couple times fight on regular TV. Earl Spence actually fought. You have to go back to the numbers that he dwarfed before, I should say, Garcia and Thurman, was when he fought right after the Olympics. I think it was after the Olympic gold, the basketball game. So he had a great lead-in audience right there. So it's never going to get to 70s and 80s with the Wild World of Sports or the Tuesday night fight, but you're starting to see there are some good broadcasts. CBS Sports Spectacular, they do their knockout night at the D. You got ESPN, who for years needed to fill content, and that's why they had the Friday night fights. You're not going to get it's a rarity down the road to see ESPN partner with, say, MMA, because there's still this stigma of it's too violent. So they take the opportunity to keep stockpiling boxing, and they give a lot of fights. They give a lot of opportunity for homes to view these fights on regular cable. You've got Fox, you've got CBS, you've got NBC Sports Network. So you'll start to see more of the fights on regular TV. But at the end of the day, when you talk about your Canelos and your GGGs, and your Cottos and whatnot, those are the guys that are going to garner the pay-per-view, the PPV.
We're talking with Rich Quinones. He hosts here on 97.3 ESPN Monday through Friday from 12 to 2. Also check out his website, journeymenboxing.com. Rich has been covering the boxing and MMA scene for, 2 decades now?
Yeah, boxing close to 20 years, absolutely. And MMA probably over the last 10 years. Not as fully entrenched as you, but the more TV work that I've done over the last 5 years.
You've been forced to the dark side a little bit.
That's putting it kindly. Hey, I enjoy it. There's no question. I don't care if it's cage side or ring side, and I've got a passion for it, and the fights are great. And like I said, Cotto fights on August 26th. I think there's another fight that night, but I don't have the desire to talk about that one. But
yeah, I'm not here to have you talk about that either. I want to ask you about something else with the boxing world here. So, to me, 2017 has been a good year for boxing. You mentioned Thurman Garcia. You have Pacquiao Hoorn tonight. You have Triple G versus Canelo in September. Anthony Joshua is the heavyweight champion, a heavyweight that people actually can tangibly grasp. You have Dante
against Klitschko. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's not some guy from another country anymore that nobody could ever see or nobody knows who he's fighting. It's a guy that people can tangibly grab. To me, and of course you have Andre Ward stopping Kovalev and kind of re-cementing his place among the pound-for-pound fighters. Talk about where boxing is in 2017, because to me, it seems like boxing is as a whole, one of the best places it's been in a while.
Listen, I just have to echo your sentiments. You were 100% accurate. You saw the fights that we saw, right? And they were all, you've had different weight classes. You start to get that notable heavyweight, the U.S. heavyweight, cruiserweights making a comeback, even though a lot of them for years, the litany of success was over in Europe. Heavyweight is sexy. You got the middleweight, you got the welterweight. So you mentioned some of those fights. When you get Thurman Garcia, when you get a Canelo and GGG, when you get a Chavez, when you get a Cotto fighting. Look, even Mayweather, who's coming back, be that as in May, it's going to draw eyeballs. Pacquiao tonight in Hoorn, Joshua, Wilder, Earl Spence, Danny Garcia, Thurman. It's been a very good year to start. And I'm telling you, I have this argument with people, but it's not even an argument at the end of the day. There are so many rising stars in boxing. The welterweight division is absolutely stacked. I mean, you can, every fight is actually, you can sit here and argue that some of these fights, you can make some of them PV, pay-per-view, PPV, because that's how good the talent is. And you look at a kid like Earl Spence, to me, if you wanted to hang your hat on something and kind of say, who's going to be the budding star? You got this kid. He's 27 years of age. He's a welterweight. He's a southpaw. He's out of Texas. He's 22-0. He's got ridiculous knockout power. He just took care of Kell Brook for the IBF World Welterweight title. If you like fast hands and you like power, get back into the welterweight division, whether it's Thurman, whether it's Garcia, Spence that I mentioned. The list goes on and on. Porter, Peterson, Vargas, who's fighting, Broner fighting. We're going to see Garcia fight again, Mikey Garcia, and you still got Berto. The middleweights are there. So boxing is fine. This misconception that it's dead, it's dying, it's not. The numbers speak for themselves. There's still local cards. We get a ton of local cards that people aren't even aware of right in our backyard. You've got young fighters. You've got Anthony Young. You've got Dallas Holden. You've got DeCarlo Perez. You've got Asnel Charles. You've got Derek Webster out of Deptford that's fighting for a regional belt in a couple of weeks. You got Christian Cardo. You've got so many very good fighters, even in our backyard in South Jersey. And parts of Jersey and Philadelphia. And I didn't even name the Philadelphia fighter. So as long as you keep giving these kids an opportunity to showcase their talent and they start winning, they put on a good show, the crowds will start to come. The crowds will start to come, and you'll see more local shows. You'll see, you'll have an opportunity to say, hey, I remember that kid win. So boxing's not going anywhere. It's been a very good year thus far.
He's Rich Quinones. He hosts here on 97.3 ESPN 12 to 2 Monday through Friday. He's been covering boxing for going on 20 years. Check out his website, journeymenboxing.com, and follow him on Twitter at RichQ. Rich, appreciate you taking some time today.
Josh, always a pleasure, pal. I will talk to you Monday, and don't forget it's the weekend, so if you get some time, check out the Fudgy Wudgy Man.
For those who don't know what he's talking about, tune in Monday through Friday, and you'll understand the inside joke.
Be well, pal.